mentioned when the grants are being written, et cetera. And when you mentioned grant writing, if I just thought about not long ago, some months ago, I was meeting with a group of people who were looking to put together a proposal, and they were throwing around words like equity and inclusion. And I told them, just stop. Like, stop it. What exactly are you going to be doing in this proposal that is going to move the needle on equity and inclusion in any real way? Please explain that to me, because what we both know are these are buzzwords that you're using to get resources that much of which are going to be wasted. So I ain't gonna get on the soapbox about this, but you got me thinking. I'm thinking how much I pay in taxes, and I think about how much this money gets wasted. There's got to be a better way for us to be able to address many of the issues that we have as a society. And I think throwing money at it, while giving money is always good, but throwing money at all the problems is not going to be the thing that fixes them. So we throw billions of dollars at problems in this country, and we still sit at the bottom of all the disparity lists. Excuse me, at the top of all the disparity lists. So
no, you're right, because it becomes that question when you see what's happening over in the Ukraine, and we're very quick to be supporters and financially step up to the plate as a country, while we still have such a huge disparity here that seems to be overlooked. And I think that becomes a very hard pill to swallow, that we can be so generous to others, and to the point where there are even scholarships, I believe, for colleges for people who have come here from the Ukraine. So I think there's a lot that is just seems unclear and unfair, and the idea that the people who are actually part of building this country, and particular the Black people who were descendants of slavery, who actually have been a part of making the country what it is today, have a harder time getting resources than people who are in despair from other countries.
And Antonio, you have seen it from a whole nother level, because you've been right there with them. So I respect you when you said stop it, because I couldn't even imagine, as long as you've been in the industry you're in, how much you have seen. And the connections, that's where grants are given in relationships.
So, a little tangent, but it just gets you thinking. And I think the takeaway for me is it's a lot of the little things. And what Chris was saying about your work, Cheryl, is like, what are we doing as individuals, and what changes are we making, and are we doing something other than writing checks? Because sometimes
we say it's a few friends here. I mean, fam here. Can you guys see who the fam that's in the house?
I can.
Yeah. Well, and you know what, Antonio, to that point too, I really, really, really loved what you shared tonight around your family and the family values that your kids had, and how they addressed that diversity, and when that was questioned, and the idea that because you created an environment where every person in the household is valued and embraced, that then whenever they go outside of the household, that everyone is represented within them. I thought that was super powerful to hear, because I think a lot of times when people think about our community, they often think about it being in despair and broken, and the idea of actually having dinners together and actually feeling united and connected as a family is not a lot of people's story, but it's not everyone's story. And I think that is just so important, which is why I love your voice in the house, because it is one that offers the idea that it doesn't have to be, even though you have your own struggles, it doesn't have to be like here's my ticket to the struggle bus all the time, and that it is the idea that there are people who actually can create harmonious moments that can help build people and personalities that go out in the world and create a difference in such a positive manner.
True. And listen to this, you guys. I want to say this. When we come to the live, I got to get this clear. If people are here, I don't know how to acknowledge them because we just got off of a show and it was all about us.
Thank you.
Now, when we get to the after show and we actually have people taking their time to come here, we have got, in my mind, I want to acknowledge them and I can't see. So
I can't either, Cheryl. Yeah, I can't see either.
Because if I was them, if I were them and I stayed and watched the show, and then I get on the after show and y'all still talking about y'all, it would be like, okay,
thank you.
You know what I'm saying? That's why
I tried to read the comments and then I got muted. So I don't know who's doing the muting while I was reading a comment that a viewer is left, but this is the nonsense that's happening right now.
Well, we have to get that right because, like I said, if it was me, because you can't buy time. And for everybody that's here right now, we want them to know I really can't see who's here, but we thank you all because it's about you. This after show is about the guests and the people that come. And we want to say
I think also, Cheryl, it's about because we're watching the show, and I don't know that our guests know that we're watching the show for the first time with them. Mm-hmm. So for me, this is unpacking that show with you guys. So I understand that they're here, and I certainly appreciate that they're here.
Right.
But this is the first time I'm watching this in its edited version. So that and Cheryl, hold on one second. And so that I can, so again, we can address the comments. I absolutely would love to do that. But I think that at the same time, there is value for people coming here to hear what our opinions are in this moment, because we pre-record, and as a pre-recorded show, there may be something relevant now in this moment that we can discuss that I think is also a fair opportunity.
Yeah, I think we should have it equal. Just balance it out. That's all, because we should unpack. That's why we bring our guests here.
Yeah. Well, is there anyone commenting right now? I can see comments. Is there anyone that is commenting right now that I can actually include into this discussion? I know that we were hoping David Johns would be here, and
but I want to say this. You're right. It is the first time we're watching the show. So we do need to see the show so we can unpack at the after show. That's true. I'm on YouTube constantly while the show is going, communicating. But this is to unpack the show. You're right. And
so what did you, as you were doing that, what were some of the comments that affected you from that?
I just answer questions back, like they were asking about the food. Was it vegan? So I just try to be in that moment and answer what I can. They were talking about a lot about, David and how the conversations were, pretty deep. But I just be there to ask anything. They would say, okay, how do we find the after show? And then I hit.
Was there any question that stood out? I mean, Aaron, was there any question when you were looking at the show and watching the chats that actually stuck out for you?
No, I appreciated Lisa. I don't know if Lisa is still here. I saw that someone was saying something about the wig and Jesus, and Lisa was
like, you know what? Let's talk about that, because I think that some of that was edited out. I did not. You referred to the wig as a Jesus wig, and I did not.
I did not say that. I didn't say this is a Jesus wig.
What'd you say?
I made a comment that I was blending genders, and I do believe that Jesus is transgender.
Are you telling me
or transgender
that you did not call that wig your Jesus wig? Is that what you're saying?
I said my look was pangender Jesus.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I remember that.
And and it was on the episode.
So okay. And for me, I then responded negatively to the idea that the description of Jesus and his hair in the Bible did not look anything like that wig.
That's true.
Okay, and that conversation happened in the chat, and I was shouting out Lisa, who shut somebody down and said he's not repping Jesus, he's repping somebody who wants to express himself however he wants to. That's what he's doing. That's what he's representing.
But you said Jesus.
Well, wait a minute. Here's Christy saying the show was one of the others can help and helpful to other families and children in every way. That's powerful, y'all.
Yeah, and my whole comment about that whole conversation about the wig is I'm thinking if you are caught on the wig, if you are caught on how it looks and how white it looks and how Jesus it looks, you have missed an incredible episode because there's so many gems that were dropped by Dr. John, by Antonio, by Cheryl, by myself, probably by you as well, Chris, but you were the one that was really, you were the one that was caught on the wig.
Well,
you were caught on the wig.
Yeah,
well,
I'm here for it.
Jesus' comment, because what Chris is saying is that really in the Bible, Jesus, if you believe in the Bible, has woolly hair. Doesn't have, and so we were indoctrinated.
There's no ombre. I'm just saying.
Yeah, but our white brothers and sisters indoctrinated us to believe that Jesus was white and had the long hair. So, Chris, I hate the wig. Or do you hate the description of the wig that Aaron gave?
I hate the description that Aaron gave because I do not believe that when you come out and then say pangender, and I love that Antonio tried to check you in the show as well because you have all kind of different labels, and so that you kind of hop around when it's convenient. And then people are unclear as to where you really stand. And then now you have this pangender Jesus wig on, and that people don't understand what that means. And so I'm just saying.
Well, you know what? If you don't get it, Google. Google is free.
What? Google what?
Google, I'm confused. Google that.
Google, I'm confused. You Google it first.
Okay, Google, because I don't have a problem.
How about
I don't have a problem.
You get your reply, then I'll do.
Okay, so how about that? How about I continue to live my life? If you don't get it, go do some research, figure it out, and then come back to me because I am living my best life.
You sure are.
Well, we're glad.
Yeah.
Go do the research. That's what I say.
Mm-hmm.
And shout out to Lisa, who basically said the same thing. This is a person living their best life. Why don't you try the same?
Well, you know what, David, when he came where he hopes the time happens where there's no need for labels, that blew my mind. I was like,
no, that's
powerful.
Right there.
I would love that.
Wouldn't that be awesome?
Looks like we got a note saying that David is trying to connect now, so maybe we'll be. There he is. Hey, David.
Listen, Linda, the devil is alive.
Welcome, Dr. Johns.
Thank you.
Yes,
congratulations
on defending your PhD.
Yay!
Thank you all.
Successfully defending your PhD.
That part. I'm finishing somebody's doctor now. How about that?
To see you was on the show saying I'm close to finishing, and now you stood the test of time. You stood the pain.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate all the affirmation that you all provided at that time.
Oh, we were just talking about. We just mentioned you perfect timing about when you said the time will come that there'll be no need for labels, and Margie just said congratulations to no need for labels.
Margie.
Wow.
Yeah, I look forward to that in part because I had lunch with a good friend, Greg Mathis, Judge Mathis's son, doing super amazing work. And the conversation we had is like, what will it look like when we get to the point where we won't need the labels? And we imagine a world where people are freer and where people don't make assumptions about how people identify based on how they show up in the world, and where people say, this is my name, these are my pronouns, this is how I'd like to be identified or respected, that people accept it and without challenge.
Mm-hmm.
I hear you. Well, that somebody's loving your smile, someone just said. So just
Thank
so
you.
You know, David, I wanted to ask you, one of the things that you pointed out when you were on the show is being from Inglewood and being very proud of that.
Yes.
And you know, there's been a lot of activity in Inglewood over the last few years in terms of development, et cetera. And I was wondering if you had any insights on the displacement that is happening with Black families and Black folks and businesses in that area.
I have lots of thoughts, and they're all colored by the fact that last night I had the pleasure of seeing the premiere of They Call Me Magic, a 4-part Apple TV documentary series that talks about Magic Johnson. And that was significant for me, not only because I have a personal relationship to, I call him Daddy Irv, and his foundation and know him, but because when I think about my childhood growing up in Inglewood, I think about the Forum, I think about Showtime Lakers, I think about events at the parks, Darby Park and Centennial Park. And when I come home now, because I live in Washington, but I'm able to come home, one, I think about the fact that so many people who called that part of Los Angeles home have been forced to move. They simply have been priced out or pushed out, right? The second thing that really vexes is probably the wrong word, but to see white people pushing strollers and running around in training bras in parts of LA that were explicitly Black is something that I'm really not used to. And then the reality is also today, I think I saw Karen Bass share some data that said Black people in Los Angeles and Black queer people in particular are 7 times more likely than our white counterparts to experience food and housing insecurity. And Cheryl, this came up a lot when we talked about your work on the episode. But all of those things compound the challenges of being Black in LA. And the fact that we built this city, right? We provide the resources to make it run, that we continue to be its life's blood and are being displaced frustrates me.
It is.
Another topic you brought up that I wanted to get your perspective on. At the time, there were conversations about what's become popularly known as the Don't Say Gay bill in Florida, which now has gone on to be signed by the governor. And not only that, it has triggered this firestorm of similar policies that are popping up all over the country. And so based on the work that you do and the proximity to that work, I'm curious about not only that, but also you're seeing a lot of anti-abortion legislation in Oklahoma and other Texas and others. These seem to be running in a parallel toward 2024.
Very much so. And the third one related to this is censorship, right? So not being able to say anything connected to truth telling around white supremacy and anti-Blackness, or the Stop Woke Act that was also introduced in Florida. And so we should be clear that these are not isolated incidents. As you articulated, there are more than 60 million children across the country who live in the 42 states where these bills have been either introduced or signed into law. Often people say, why don't you move? Why don't you leave? Why don't you not go to that space if they're not going to respect you? And I make that point to make clear that there's not really room for us to run, right? That's one. The second thing is, I believe it was today also, Ron DeSantis, I'm trying to be respectful, introduced legislation, if not signed legislation, that reduces the abortion time to 15 weeks. Why men who will never know what it's like to birth a baby are so consumed with telling women what to do with their body will always be confusing to me. But the point here that this is really about turning out a base of white people, people who benefit from white privilege and who otherwise find it necessary to hold on to white supremacy. My hope is that everyone who's not in that category, who understands the importance of anti-Blackness and democracy, shows up during this midterm election season to vote. It should not be the case that we are enabling political bullies to use the pulpits that belong to the people to target our children or our communities.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that.
It is a heck.
Can I challenge you on something?
Please.
Yeah, always.
Because when you talk about we talked about white supremacy in this episode, and when you talk about people who benefit from white privilege, if there's a core message that I'm trying to get out at this moment, it is that there are people who perpetuate white privilege who don't necessarily benefit from it. They simply inflict pain on others because of it. And that is literally the thing that I try to get out the most, that it is not white people benefiting and getting privileges when we talk about white supremacy. It is what Black people, my family members, with my community, my neighbors, they were also very much believers in white supremacy. The way that we talk down about Black people, the way that we get jealous when we see a Black person thriving, that's all white supremacy.
Agreed. No challenge. I agree with everything you just said.
That's true. And you know what? A lot of times, because it's been so ingrained, we're not aware. This was a powerful episode when we began talking about whites, the whole word, the difference in the different categories.
Yeah.
And how, because I came from the time where everybody was gay, and I'm of that generation where it's like, okay, how many letters, what, and what? I'm one of those. And yet that's a mindset of saying, hey, no, now you get back in that box. I don't want you to have all those letters. I don't want to have to remember all that. And, but it is who I am. And, it's not, I'm not even aware that that's a white supremacist kind of mindset. So
words matter, which is something that came up a lot on the episode. And I just saw the comment about our sister naming that as tertiary oppression. So I do think that it's important to acknowledge that Black people can't be racist, right? But we can, to Aaron's point, digest, consume, and or act in ways that mimic anti-Blackness. And then to your point, Aunt Cheryl, I think that one, where we are now is a reflection of progress. It has never been the case that all queer people were just gay, right? Even before the term gay existed, people showed up in ways that we now are able to refer to as pansexual or non-binary or non-conforming. Some of this is a reflection of how things grow and change over time. I think a lot about the conversation that you all were having before I joined around the enslaved, right? Like refusing to say slaves, but naming that we were enslaved as a practice, right? But there's also related to that an evolution, a continued evolution of the words that we have been used or have been used to refer to us thereafter. Think about Negroes, colored people, African Americans, our Black people. And the reality is that different people have different relationships to these terms over time, right? That's one part of it. The second part of it with regard to the LGBTQIA plus stuff, the alphabet soup is that, yes, I understand when people say they have fatigue. Often well-meaning people who are not members of the community or who don't have public jobs that require them to recite it in such a way struggle to get through the acronym. But it's also really important for us to sit with every single letter and interrogate why it is that people feel that it is so necessary to have these labels or these categories that make it easy to place people in. The biggest part about all of this is when people find it difficult to put somebody in a box. Mm-hmm. And this goes back
David, I just wanted to interject a little bit there, just because as we are moving more and more towards a more global environment, some of the labeling is not consistent across the board, because if in South Africa, if you call someone colored, it refers to someone who is light-skinned or of a different ethnic background than African. It's like Indians or Asians or, other people that may be there who have a lighter skin complexion. So that but if you use the word colored here, it would seem a bit antiquated and people would believe that you were being stereotypical about, something negative about our past in the US. So I think in a global perspective, then how then does that labeling affect the world on a more global scale?
Two things I want to pull out from what you said. The first is the acknowledgement that context matters, right? So to your point, a word here will mean something different because of context than it might any other place throughout the world. That is true. That will always be true. And the specific example around colored, I offer that to say less that people are using colored now, although there are a lot of people who create coalitions that include people of color, right? Or there are people who don't want to say Black, so they'll say people of color or minority groups will make other references to us. I think it's really important to acknowledge that there's power in precision, and we have to get more comfortable saying things like white supremacy, racism, and anti-Blackness and talk specifically about things that impact Black people. And there are opportunities for us to build coalitions using words that matter to people, acknowledging that they're fluid.
I
That's
heard that.
helpful.
Wow.
So
Well, I mean, because right now I see something that's happening, you know, just even with our show, you know, on Fox, and just, you know, the language we use is the LGBTQIA plus. But I see a lot of scenarios where people stop at Q. So, you know, so as letters are being added, what is then that responsibility, or, you know, I don't know who's adding them. So the thing is, it's the idea. Who added the letters? I don't know who the who is. You know, who was that omnipotent, like LGBT person that
I
said,
always say,
here are the letters, and now the
Well,
This
letters
is the
have
Jay-Z.
been
Who are the they?
printed.
Show me the
So,
they. Yeah.
but I said this last season, and it got cut out. I said, if you're not an LGBTQIA plus, then you're an AFSHOLE.
that was
Because
not cut out. We all heard.
No,
you
I
say
remember
that.
that.
yeah, it wasn't cut out.
I remember that.
Oh,
They
no.
didn't
We
cut that.
heard
I
all of
remember
that.
It wasn't cut out.
Right. I remember that.
Well, I say that because the letters just simply, to me, reflect the human race. These are just humans.
No,
And
I'm
I
going to
think
push you
that-
on that. No, that's not true.
Okay.
Yes, we are all humans, and our social experiences, how we experience this world that we're born into based on whatever context exists, is shaped by these terms. In part, and the terms exist so that we can name parts of our experience. Chris, the answer to your question in terms of who creates the letters, it's often advocacy organizations. And in particular, when we think about the queer agenda, this goes back to a conversation we were having on the show, it's mostly white gay men. Right?
So
It's
I want to
mostly
say
white gay
something. I
men.
want to say something. I want to jump in on that. And what I want to jump in and say, because I do call myself gay, and I've always said that I call myself gay for political reasons. I'm very clear on why I chose that particular term. And one of the reasons is when I look at America and America's priorities, and we go back to the late 70s, early 80s, when the AIDS epidemic was destroying the homosexual community. At that time, it was the arrogance and self privilege of white men that moved the needle on that issue and ultimately saved many, many lives. And why that was important, why I think that's important, is when we look at how we transform this country and our place in it and creating space for everybody, we have to know how the power base works. Yeah. And you know that more than anybody, David. And you have to be strategic in some of your choices. So something you said earlier about context, I think that is, we should have, people should get PhDs in context, because most people don't understand context. Words are triggers for some emotional or experience that they have had, and they cannot move beyond that to have any real conversations oftentimes about what's needed at any particular time. So I think that these words we use, they're appropriate in some contexts. In other contexts, they are not. For moving certain needles and certain agendas, it is the absolute word that's necessary. Just like white supremacy, I agree with you, needs to be said. Blackness, spoken boldly and loudly, needs to be done. But I think in addition to that, because we'll divert to, let's just love each other. Let's just create a space for everybody. And the moment I hear that, like at its core, I believe that. I advocate for that. But we know it's not enough to just say that. We must be very intentional, very strategic in how we move certain things along. You're a disruptor. We need disruptors. We have activists. We have those that then put it all together and get the outcome that we want. So I think if we can, in these conversations with each other, be able to talk about what we're up to. What are we trying to accomplish? And then the vocabulary that supports that which we're trying to accomplish. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out there.
I absolutely agree. And I think two things are important to lift up. A part of the consequence of gay white men prioritizing themselves around the HIV/AIDS epidemic when it was introduced in the late 80s is the erasure of how Black queer folk showed up and were affected by it, which is why still to this day, Black people are disproportionately impacted, not just Black same-gender loving queer men, Black trans women, but Black cisgendered heterosexual women. And I find too often that we don't have conversations about HIV because it was shaped and discussed and promulgated in the media as a gay disease. And again, gay means white, gay, male. And so when you think about the fact that there have been significant shifts and some 80% of gay white men have access to or on PrEP. And while I want to be clear that there are a few things that are nice about the legacy of HIV, in particular, the damage it has done by taking so many lives. For a lot of white folks, it's a thing of the past. And we now, to this day, our organization is struggling to get Black people to simply say HIV because it has been crafted as a gay thing and a gay disease. And so
I think I agree with you on that, David. And I would go further to say, if, for example, with that, if we could get folks to acknowledge that legacy, because let's face it, had white gay men not moved the way they did, there'd be way more Black people dead than are currently dead.
Wait, but can we say? I want to say one more thing. We're giving white men way too much credit because
no, I'm not giving them credit. No, I'm not giving them credit. What I'm saying, this is where I'm gonna drill this down. This was a group of people who told a government first of all they had grew up in this environment that told them since birth that they were the prize, they were the king. And if not for their homosexuality, that prize and that kingdom belonged to them. So they had that in their pocket when this disease came along and started wiping them out in droves. They're like, oh, hell no. This government is going to do something about it. You have to start with a let me finish, David. You have to start with a self-concept. And I think that unfortunately, I mean, where I'm going in this idea of giving them credit for anything. As a result of that, we have PrEP that we can get on, meaning anybody can get on. We have antiviral drugs that people can now take. Had that group of people not fought for that, none of those things would have existed.
But here's my point. I don't want to have this conversation anymore, assuming that white men took credit for the work of white women, physicians and activists and organizers, and queer people. White men took credit for it in the same way that in June during Pride Month, most of the Pride events, the people on the podium are going to be white men taking credit for work that we do behind the scenes. It is not white men who are responsible for the ACT UP. The organization I know that you know really well was the work, the labor was done by us, queer folks of color, to use the term, and white women. It was white men. We give white men way too much credit at most of their mediocrity. It was white men who claimed the credit for the work.
I'm with you there, David. I mean, I'm with you there.
To be fair, there were white men, scientists, researchers who have dedicated their life's work to HIV and AIDS, and they shouldn't be discounted because they're white men.
And I agree with that too,
that's not my goal,
Aaron.
but I do want to trouble the way in which we give them credit and acknowledge them wholesale and erase everybody else to their detriment. To the point of the show that I appreciate, I don't want to not deny them of their credit as well, but I do want to lift up the folks who often get erased, which are not white men.
Absolutely,
okay,
absolutely. And yeah. I think that that's valid. So
very much so.
We can close on
that's
on,
the only point
that
there.
part.
I don't.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm not about giving white people credit for shit that they deserve.
No. But I think I'm not gonna say any more about that. I'm not gonna say any more.
Over a drink.
Yeah, we'll do that. We could do that over a drink because there's a lot of nuance and complexity there that we can break down in a different way.
And the point is that we need to have more of these discussions to find ways to make these connections and move our community forward.
And I want Black people to benefit, period. That at the end of the day, my point was that our ability to benefit from another group of people who demanded something. That really was the
five.
really the long and short of the point.
We got 5 minutes. We got 5 minutes. I guess should we tell fam, everybody that tuned in to see David. David, you rocked it. You coming with so much. Just your wordplay. It's a gift from God. Tell us now, what's the future look like for you? You know, Dr. John. What does it look like?
I received that, and I want to say first, thanks to everybody who's tuned in and the folks who've been in the chat. The Honorable, she's been lighting this up. I received everything that she's been saying. Thank you for that. And the future is bright, and it's Black, and it's queer AF. The work now is focused on providing space for young people to talk about the harm that is being done by this hateful legislation. We're really excited. Next month in May, we'll be honoring a group of Black queer elders, women identified elders, as a way to remind folks that if we're lucky, we get to age and share wisdom in the way that you all are. And we're super excited because we have a partnership. I don't know if we talked about it, with the Boris Lawrence Hinton Foundation to provide Black, queer, trans, and non-binary young people with free, qualified mental health support. So just trying to find ways to continue to show up in the gap and make sure that I show up in the way that I wish other people had shown up for me.
All right. Love it. Love it.
Look,
Can I read a comment or two?
Good to see you, fam.
Wait, guys, before we go, I want to read a couple comments.
Okay.
I want to shout out Alvin, who says, because this is important. White supremacy can have many faces and identities, not just white cis male ones. Also, Eero said, we have been taught to hate ourselves as Black people, and we learned well. So true. And the Honorable Angelina Nordstrom says, there are so many levels to white supremacy, which anti-Blackness is the foundation. Many of the isms and phobias that come from a place of envy and hatred, we must challenge ourselves to unlearn. That is the work that we must do. It is not easy because we have been taught it from birth, but it's just something that has to happen. We can't keep looking at each other and seeing the enemy.
Great point.
Yeah.
Great point. All right. Well, thank you. All right, guys.
Thank you for that, Aaron.
Listen,
Thanks, everybody.
I said this in real time, but I hope y'all hear my heart when I say thank you for doing God's work, creating a space where our community can be seen in all of our beautiful diversity, where we can argue about things that demonstrate that arguments don't have to end in destruction. They can be productive ways for people to learn and grow, and to create space for people to increase their competence and compassion is literally God's work. And it's one of the ways that we will get free. So thank you to each of you and to everyone who plays a part in birthing this baby.
Woo!
Thank you, David John.
No better note to end on.
I need to hear that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great guest in the house.
I agree.
Y'all.
Thank you. I'm trying to be a scholar like Dr. David.
Y'all have a great
night, everyone.
Good night.
I look forward to the drink and the continued debate, Antonio.
Count on it. Count on it.
All right. Bye.